and welcome back to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. On yesterday's broadcast, we met Roger Mort, who is the head of a business which produces building material which is impervious to fire. It can either be left to put out the fire by itself, or it simply lets the fire die down without damaging anything else over a course of time. Now he'll tell us more about the business. Roger Mort, once again our guest on today's WIHS Journal.
Maybe even double again the following year. Because people are just catching on, and big companies are starting to place big orders.
In terms of personnel, then what does that do to the size of your workforce then?
We've doubled our size of our workforce since last year. The newer stuff, we're getting it manufactured for us, so it'll probably put on a lot of people at their end, and all the different plants that are printing this stuff and slitting it, but it'll ship direct out of them to the end users. So countrywide, will probably be 30 to 60 people employed, but just not all for me,
Yeah. You've spoken already about tests and passing approvals in places like California. Do you have to go through a permitting or certifying process in every market that you service or will be servicing?
Not exactly. We got our testing done at the Canadian Research Facility, which is recognized by the UN. So those tests we were able to turn and hand into the DOT, and we now have special permits for, you can take lithium batteries up to either 800 pounds or 1,200 watt hours, wrap them in our paper, put them in our box, and then you can ground ship them anywhere in the U.S. And because of that permit, Europe recognizes that our laws are way stricter than their laws, so they automatically accept that permit and they can ship them all over Europe doing the same thing.
When I think of lithium batteries, I think of airliners, because there have been some pretty serious fires and destruction of aircraft in flight when lithium battery or ion battery got hot and started a fire. Does that mean that you can ship them by air, or does it all remain a ground movement on your part?
Right now, you will not be able to ship them by air under the plane. There are, I think, one or two cargo plane companies that will actually handle a lithium battery, but for the private individual, you have to have it all in the cabin. And we just passed a test last week at the Canadian Transportation Authority lab. I made an envelope out of this paper. We stuck a cell phone in there, heated the cell phone up so it went off. The one thing that happens because of the coolness in the water, moisture, is that the gases can't get hot enough to get to the 830 C range. So the only thing that came out of the envelope was CO2 for about 8 seconds. And then the battery stayed in there at 530 degrees burning for 4 minutes. And then it just cooled off and it went out. So if airliners had these envelopes on there and somebody's cell phone, tablet or whatever started to heat up, they'd shove it in my envelope, seal it, put it in the where they put the food in the little metal area, and it might get a little gas that comes off, but the gas is CO2, and the air scrubbers would scrub it, and you wouldn't even have to land the plane. It'd be a non-issue.
Boy, I can't remember the last time I heard anything that's anywhere near as groundbreaking as the development you've been describing to us over the past few minutes.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, and everybody who gets to witness it and touch it and feel it, they're like, it's insane that it's that easy, that good, and when you're done with it, you throw it in the recycling dumpster and it goes back into a piece of paper. Because everything used in our process is organic.
What kind of inquiry or research did you have to do in order to develop something like that? Because it's one thing to have something common in the world, on the one hand, that goes into trash. It's another to actually be able to say we're green to the point that the end user on one degree or another can turn this item of ours around at the end of its useful life cycle and actually see it go through something useful all over again.
Yep. Well, the guy, his name is Guy, who developed this original paint and now the ink, he's a chemist and just an inventor and very intelligent guy and a really good friend. Me, I have a paper background. I worked in the corrugated industry for 25 years before coming to PACT and was on a lot of projects developing new packaging and better ways to do things. So I had such a great network. Like when we wanted to find out if it was completely recyclable, contacted my old friends at West Rock, and they have a lab that determines whether the thing's completely recyclable or not. They're like, send us a sample. Send them a sample. They come back, they're like, wow, yeah, this thing will go right through the recycling process like a normal piece of paper. So a lot of my friends helped me along the way, and just my past knowledge, and a lot of luck. Because if my salesperson had hung up on Guy and not given me his number, we would have never got together.
So contact still is a huge deal.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you're developing a product and trying to get it off the ground. Because otherwise, you're paying thousands upon thousands of dollars to get people to do these tests for you, versus they're as interested in it as, me. And they're like, hey, we'll do this one. We just want to see it. Boom. And they test it, and they're like, wow, here's your report, great. And it didn't cost me anything. Like when we wanted to print our first actual product, I called a sales friend of mine that worked for my old company, and I'm like, hey, you think you could get me an hour of press time on one of your machines? So he called another guy, and the guy knew me from my past experience, and the guy was like, Roger, just come down and put the bucket on the machine, and I'll sell you the sheets, and you just do what you got to do. We went down, and Guy was like, every time I do a test, it costs like $30,000. How much are we paying for this? And I'm like, I bought the sheets for $450, and they're giving us the press time for free. And he's like, serious? I'm like, I made these guys a lot of money in their past and my past, so they're doing me a favor.
So networking still matters, even in the high-tech world. With all the communications skills we have, it still matters that people can get together.
Yeah, you got to have the right team of people. I just got off a call because we're developing a new plastic bucket that is flame resistant, and it was 4 different companies, and they're all great, intelligent people. But you need those 6 different figures that were in this call from the 4 different companies, all talking at the same time, and each one has a specialty. And all of a sudden, within like an hour, it sounds like we've got what we need, and we're going to proceed to a test. And it's just networking with the right people.
With that in mind then, sir, what is the most effective contact point for someone who's been listening to our conversation to reach out and touch you and see what between the two of you something can develop?
If they go on to www.pactww.com and put in, what they want to talk about, either one of my sales folks will contact them back, or one of my designers, or myself, and start that conversation.
Thank you very much for your time today, sir. Appreciate it very much. Been speaking to Roger Mort for the past few minutes here for the broadcast. Thank you very much for your time today, sir.
Thank you.
My guest on yesterday and today's WIHS Journal broadcast has been industrialist Roger Mort. For further information about what you heard on today's broadcast or yesterday's, call us at 860-346-1049. That's 860-346-1049. Or drop us an email line to office@wihsradio.org. That's office@wihsradio.org. You're also invited to check out our YouTube channel at WIHS 104.9, which we have recently relaunched. That's WIHS 104.9. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.